All right, in this video, we're going to work with our object and our container. So it looks like our object is actually in our container. So I'll zoom in. And we have our container and our white cat very carefully labeled on our layers palette. And in fact, since I'm going to be working with this, I'm going to make another group and put those in the group so I can keep this organized, because I can't stress enough how important it is to label your layers and keep them organized. And I'll be looking for that when you turn in your Photoshop file. So I'm going to make a group. I'm going to double click to rename it, and I'm going to call it Container and Cat. Then I'm just going to click and drag the container in there. I'm going to click and drag the cat in there. Now, just like when we worked on the curtain above with the black cat, I'm going to need to duplicate this container so some of it is in front of my object. So I'm going to go click on the container down here, and I'm going to duplicate the layer. I'm going to go up to the hamburger and choose Duplicate Layer, and I'm going to call it Container Top. And the destination, I don't have to change that, it's just the background. So I can click OK. And there it is. And then I'm going to move that container to the top so it's on top of the cat. Now I need to adjust this. This area on top here needs to be hidden. But I already have a mask going on here. Now I could definitely take my brush tool here and I could have black on top, and I am not in the right place. Careful, this is what happens if you're on the layer instead of the layer mask. So I'm going to Command Z to undo that. I'm going to click on the layer mask this time, and I'm going to click and drag, and I could select, or I could reveal that part, but when I get down here, it's going to be really difficult for me to reveal all of the object and make it really precise. So I'm going to make a selection, and I'm going to select the whole edge of this container here. And I'm going to do it with the pen tool because the pen tool is just so handy. So I'm on the top container. I am on the thumbnail this time. And I'm going to grab my pen tool and just kind of trace the edge of the object here. This time I'm going to keep my points pretty close together. If my line isn't quite smooth, that's okay because this object doesn't have a very smooth line to it. It's a cat bed. So I'm selecting the edge of that object. And I got to the edge of my screen, so I can just scroll over and keep going. And here we are, we're almost to the edge, and then it's going to get exciting. Trust me, it'll be exciting. Okay. I'm going to go all the way up here. Okay, so I got to the edge. Now here's the exciting part. I am just going to kind of make a line to make sure it's outside of that object, or outside of the container, and then complete my shape. So if I zoom out a little bit, you can see how that looks. I'm not being very careful about this. It doesn't have to be exact. Now that I have my path, I need to change it into a selection. So I'm going to click on Paths. I have the curtain path there that I already did. I've got the work path. I'll title it Container. Then I'm going to turn it into a selection by just clicking the selection button down there. I'll go back to my layers. I need to click on the mask, okay? Remember, not on the thumbnail of the object, or the container, but on the mask. And then I'm going to grab my paintbrush again, and I'm going to keep painting. So black hides, white reveals. I have black on top, and as I paint, notice I can move my cursor outside of the space, outside of that selection, but nothing is happening. I'm going to hit the slash key on my keyboard to make sure I indeed, colored all of that, which I did. So that's good. That's the slash, which is 3 keys to the right of the P key. So there we have it. I can hit Command D to deselect, and I have my object in that container. If I click on the white cat object and the move tool, I can now move the cat back and forth. And no matter where I put the cat, It looks like it's in the object. And I kind of like the cat a little off center. So that's good. But we're not quite done yet. This object doesn't look like it's grounded. It looks like it's floating on top of this, this stool here. So I need to create a shadow. And when I do that, I'm going to do it on a separate layer, and I want it at the bottom underneath the container. So I'm going to click on the bottom, create a new layer. I'm going to call it shadow. But the layer was created above my container, so I'm just going to move it down below it. Now I'm just going to use my paintbrush. This time I'm not on a mask, I'm just on a layer, so what I paint will actually be in my image. I'm going to go up to the top of my screen here and make sure my hardness is all the way down to 0 because I want my shadow to have a fuzzy edge. And I usually want a big brush when I do this. It depends on how detailed your object is that you need to create a shadow for, but this is a big flat object, it's going to be really easy. And the shadow is underneath everything, so that's important too. So I'm just going to click, and I'm going to drag, and I'm going to create a shadow. Now this shadow is too dark. That's okay, because I can go up to the opacity on that layer. I can take it down. Now this time the opacity is probably going to be pretty high. That looks too much. That doesn't look like enough. That looks pretty good. If I want to, I could add a little bit more in there and a little bit more there. That's okay. So there's my shadow. I'm going to Command 0 to zoom out. And I can keep adjusting the shadow from seeing it in the big picture too if I want. So I think right about there looks good. In fact, it looks a lot better with the shadow than it did without. That looks fake. This looks more grounded. So there we have it. And then I can collapse the group here with the container and the cat. And I have created this container with an object inside of it. That's it for this video.